My name is Colin and you're watching Plotted with Me TV. And this is a channel where I take you around bits of London and tell you a bit about their history. Now, a bit blowy today. I'm hoping this windbreak or this windshield on my microphone's working well. But here we go. So, if you remember right, we were in Borough in part 1 and we finished off at the St George and Martyr Church over there. Built as this current version, built in 1734, but it has a mention all the way back to 1220. I managed to pop in. I've never been in it before, so I managed to pop in earlier. I didn't get the film, but I did take a few pictures. Nice ladies and some blokes were in giving the place a clean, I suppose, in preparation for Easter Sunday. And they were very welcoming, and I had a quick wander around and took some photos. So apologies for the quality of the photos. I'm definitely no photographer. But it is very nice inside. You certainly get the impression the pews have been in operation since the 1730s. They just have that sort of used and old look to them, but it is very nice. But first point I'd like to show you is this one. Hold on, I'm just going to scroll and tilt it slightly. There we go. Now, this white building across the street. Can you see at the top there is a crown? Very visible, and this is because back in the 1800s, early 1900s, this was known as the Crown Bar. Now, the bar's long gone. I believe it's some sort of college building now, but they've left the facade at the front. And the reason I'm showing you this place is because we're starting today with the story of a serial killer called George Chapman. Now, his real name wasn't George Chapman. That was the name he took on, a sort of anglicised name, because he was actually from Poland. I won't even try to attempt his real name because I've met some Polish people and I don't even come close whenever I try to pronounce names. So I'll let you look him up on Google. Just Google George Chapman Borough Poisoner, because this guy was an absolute charmer. He set up with several women during his time here in England, married at least one of them committing bigamy because he was still married to the lady they had in Poland. And he would also have a sort of succession of mistresses. Sometimes at the same time he would actually get them to move in with his current partner, and his main habit seems to be domestic violence. And then whenever he got tired of the women, or they had a legacy that they could leave him, he would poison them. So he managed to poison 3 women that we know of, and that's what he was eventually hung for in 1903. But he also has a little claim to fame in that he was one of the prime candidates as named for being Jack the Ripper. In fact, Inspector Aberline, who was the main sort of lead investigator at the time, was convinced that Chapman was the Ripper. And coincidentally, the woman whose name he took on, Chapman, he had lived with a lady called Annie Chapman, and Annie Chapman, a different woman, was the name of the Ripper's second victim. So bit of a coincidence there, but that wasn't the reason why they thought he was the Ripper. It was, due to his general attitude to women, the fact that he was sort of couldn't account for his whereabouts at the time of the murders. Whenever he left London and moved to America for a while, the murder stopped. There was all this sort of stuff. But yeah, potential Jack the Ripper, definite misogynist and serial killer. So a cheery start to today's tour. Now we're going to go on round this way. We're going to walk down towards Borough Station. Oh, here we go. Nice and noisy bike. Here we go. While we're here, I'll show you St George and Martyr from the front. There you go. Apparently when they were looking in the crypt, as well as finding over a 1,000 coffins, there is evidence of sort of Roman sort of foundations and things, and medieval bits of medieval archaeology. And this also has a claim to fame that back in the 1400s, when Henry V had achieved the humongous victorious battle at Agincourt in France, and was making his way back, and let's face it, this was the main road back up from Europe. Whenever he was making his way back, he was greeted on the steps of the church by the aldermen at the time. So it definitely has its place in English history, London's history. Now we're going to go around this way. And this area, 17 and 1800s, was exceedingly poor. Lots of slums. It was known sort of colloquially, sort of locally, as shall we say, as the Mint. And there's a reason for that. For those of you who've watched the Spitalfields tour, and we talk about how poverty-ridden it was, with, overcrowding and crime and vice, the Mint was on a par with it. Certainly, according to the social researcher Charles Booth, who in the late 1800s did a survey of London, charting the poverty and the wealth of different parts of London. Now, I was looking for something here. I haven't been down this way for a while, but I know there was a plaque. Can I see it? Not straight away. But if I can't find it, no matter, I'll tell you what it was about. No. Okay. I'm not seeing the plaque straight away, which makes me think maybe it's been removed. While I'm here, though, I will just mention that it's interesting that street's called Sanctuary Street, because obviously it was sanctuary that people would come looking for in the liberties in this part of London. So I've mentioned before about liberties, basically areas of that were sort of linked to some of the larger churches, and someone who stayed within the grounds of that sort of parish boundary, as it were. And if it was a liberty, then you were safe from prosecution for a number of crimes, apart from treason against the monarch or heresy against the church. But you could murder someone, or be a robber, or fraud, or whatever it might be. And if you stayed within the bounds of the liberty, you were fine, and you had sanctuary. And there you go, Sanctuary Street, because there was lots of liberties down this part of London. And that building there, it says it's a Peabody Trust. So we came across George Peabody during the Bishopsgate Walk, explaining about how he left a lot of money to help the homeless or the poor get homes and house them. And Peabody Trust is still going strong. But this is one of many of his housing developments around London. So this shows you how it ties in with the other walks that we've done. Now, where was the plaque? Maybe it's further on round. Like I say, been a few years actually since I was down this part of London. At least around this. I've been up around the Borough Market a lot, but I haven't been down here recently. And over there, you see it says, let me see, Douglas Buildings. To the right of that says Mint Street, because that was the name of the area. Mint. The Mint. Okay, so how did the Mint get its name? Well, there was a plaque, and I remember seeing it, but Lord knows where it was now. But basically, down this area, hold on, it's quiet now, so I'll spin round. Come on. There we go. So, 1500s, 1400s and the 1500s, there was a big house down here owned by a duke. It was the Duke of Suffolk. And him and his successors lived in a grand house down by here. And it had like orchards, ponds, vineyards, even surrounded by a moat, but it was all down around this area. And then in 1543, Henry VIII was the king, and his sister married into the Duke of Suffolk's family, and the big house was converted into a mint, so what would create the coins for the realm. Whether this was a way of Henry providing for his sister and making sure that her husband had a going concern, I don't know. But basically the mint was moved to here, but it only lasted about 15 years. I think it was about 1557 or about 58 that the place was destroyed. But the name of the mint, because the mint was here, stuck. And so whenever the area sort of went into bad times, lots of slums, as I say, vice, criminality, it was just known as the Mint, hence Mint Street across the way. Alright, now, following on from the idea that there was lots of poverty, etc., we have, Disney Street, that's a different one. We have a social experiment. Now, we've just talked about, very briefly, mentioned George Peabody and his social housing for the London poor. Well, there was someone else who was a bit of a pioneer in that. And her thinking was, I suppose it was the old nurture versus nature debate, because what she did was she provided a few little cottages for some of the poor people to move into under very strict rules. So, for example, if there was any boozing or any bad language, you would have got booted out. And I'm sure there were other ones. But I suppose if you were living in a slum and then you got suddenly the offer of a very picturesque cottage with a few provisos, you would have jumped at it as your chance to live a better life. And we're just about to go and have a look at it. So, there you go, this garden is a finalist in the 2025 Britain in Bloom with the Royal Horticultural Society. And this place is all the work of this lady, Octavia Hill, social reformer and co-founder of the National Trust in 1887. And then this was restored by an organisation called Bankside Open Spaces Trust. They do a number of things in the area. So, we're going to go and have a quick look around. A little mosaic, I suppose, depicting some of the history of the area, I would imagine. That's what they usually do. You can see what looks like a little church hall. And then got a blue plaque. Octavia Hill, social reformer, establishes garden hall and cottages, and pioneered the Army Cadets in 1887 to 90. Well, she was obviously a bit of a girl. Now this is interesting because this portrays a relatively famous incident. When we do the St Paul's walk, which I'll do at some point, there's a tour that I do up around by St Paul's, and part of it is a place called Postman's Park. And in Postman's Park there is a memorial to people who died whilst trying to save other people. And I think the inspiration for it was this lady, Alice Ayres. And there's a little plaque here that says, "This depicts a mural that used to be displayed in the Red Cross Hall of Alice Ayres by Walter Crane. Alice Ayres saved her 3 nieces from a fire in Union Street," which is just around the corner. And she fell down from the window and died later. And that says by Anne Karen Humford. So Alice Ayres, I believe, was the inspiration for that memorial, which we'll do on another walk. And it's even been used, her name's been used, and the story's been used in a movie. I think it was called Closer, I think. Patrick Marber. It had Jude Law and Natalie Portman, if memory serves. But, yeah. So, just shows you how different things sort of tie together in London. And here are the cottages I mentioned. Still here. And obviously, nice and quiet little area. Apart from my feet crunching on the gravel. And we go from one memorial garden, or little sort of dedicated garden, to another one. Now we're on Red Cross Way, and it says Alice Ayres died in Union Street, and that's the street we're just about to join. And as you can see over there, it says Crossbones Graveyard. And this is maintained by that Bankside Services organisation, the one that's looking after the garden as well. But it's only open, what's it say, Wednesday to Friday, 12 till 2, and today's Saturday, so no joy, but I have been in, it's quite nice. I might have some photos of that, I'll see if I can find them. So, it says Crossbones is a graveyard of the outcast dead. Who are the outcasts? Sex workers, immigrants, physically disabled people and many ordinary poor working people. So, I told you there about how there was, I think it was the 1980s, the Museum of London did an excavation, and they excavated, it says there are 148 bodies, but by sort of working out the area of the graveyard and the amount of bodies they found compared to the rest of the size of it, they estimated there was about 15,000 of them. So, by way of background, essentially, hold on, let's come around because it's quiet at the minute. Come on, there we go. Essentially, medieval times, from the 1100s onwards, the church would act basically as pimp for the local prostitutes. There was a thing that was signed by Thomas Becket, the guy who would go on to become a saint, whereby it was called the Ordinances, and it was basically rules governing the licensing of brothels and prostitutes. And essentially, they would give a cut of what they earned to the church. They would be protected at their brothels, which were known as stews, and that was basically the arrangement. So they were protected. They wouldn't have been harassed because these rules were in place. But the hypocrisy comes in that when these ladies died, they weren't allowed to be buried in consecrated ground, despite having made money for the church. Because of their lifestyle, they had to be buried elsewhere, and this basically became a graveyard, for the ladies of the night, as it were. And it gets mentioned there was a London diarist, 1598, called John Stowe, and he mentions this, as being basically a prostitute's graveyard. And then, come the 1700s, less of that side of things, and prominence, and certainly not being licensed, it then develops and starts becoming a pauper's graveyard. And the land is owned by the Transport for London, the tube people, and that sort of thing. And they basically were lobbied very heavily. They didn't want to do it, I don't think, to basically try and preserve this piece of ground. It used to stretch further up, and it looks like they gave this end, to the Bankside Services Trust to maintain. And people come, and I'll show you on the gate, they come and they leave trinkets and remembrances for either for people here or maybe for people in their own countries that they feel haven't been remembered properly, and they tie them to the gate. And every year on Halloween, I believe there is a torchlight procession in memory of all the people that are buried in here. So as I say, that's estimated some 15,000. I'll take you around and show you the gate. Take a step back. Now, if you're ever visiting, it tells you the whole story of everything, different things that have been found along that sort of fencing. And this gate used to be up further to the left because, as I say, the graveyard stretches all the way up. But this is Crossbone's graveyard. And the prostitutes that used to work the area, they were known as Winchester geese because the area was controlled by the Bishop of Winchester, and they had to wear a specific sort of uniform which made it look like a big white chest, and hence the geese sort of, and that, what do you call it? Metaphor maybe. Analogy? Same English is failing me. There we go. If you see there's some geese there. Oh, I can't quite fit between the bars. But you can see it's got some nice little monuments and it's a well kept garden. So when I go in, I usually just leave a little, chuck 'em a pound or two. All helps. Now, I just thought I'd show you this bit over here. Now, I mentioned about the mint, as I hope you will remember from about 5 minutes ago, and how it was very, poverty-ridden and one of the poorer areas of London. And this was one of the things that was put in place to help. And I believe a lot of the money was given by a philanthropist called the Earl of Salisbury. Got a few pubs named after him. Oh, sorry, Shaftesbury. He's got a new pubs named after him. So the sign above that window says the Mint and Gospel Lighthouse Mission Shaftesbury Society. And then the one on the left says, to the glory of God, this stone was laid by the Right Honourable Lord Mayor of London, Sir William P. Tredegar, I think it was, Tredegar maybe, can't see from here, November 13th. Is that 1805? Oh, I'm going to have to go over now, aren't I? There we go. Trelgar, 1906 it looks like, maybe. Your guess is as good as mine. But yeah, anyway, what this was essentially there was a scheme in the poor areas called the Ragged School Scheme, and the idea was to try and give people in poverty-stricken areas, the children, at least a chance to have some form of basic education. And this was one of the places that was built in that regard. And I've just spotted something that I wasn't even going to... I'd forgotten all about, to be honest. But here we go. We may as well give it a mention. Because normally I'll go back up Red Cross Street. But we'll go slightly different. What the hell? Why not live on the edge? That's what I say. Now, you see the green right in front of the tree there. There is a green pipe just sticking up out of the ground. It's got pink chairs at the bottom of it. That is what's known as a stink pipe. And a stink pipe, there's a few of them still left around London. And much like humans, the sewer system, it's not healthy for it to sort of keep all the trapped wind inside. And so there was outlets, and they would build these stink pipes in that part of the sewer system, but they would build them so that the sort of the noxious fumes would emerge high up in the air, so that people wouldn't even be aware that they were being let out. But that's why they're called stink pipes. And not so common now. I'm sure there's more modern ways of doing this, extractor fans and various other things. But this is one of the original ones, I would imagine, from the Sir Joseph Bazalgette sewage scheme. That was the 1850s. So yeah, a stink pipe. Like I say, not the norm, but good for trapped wind. Okay. I just thought we'll walk up here because I always thought this little church was exceedingly elaborate for a little church up a side street. I can't even remember what it's called, but it's, noticeable. Yeah, even the name's dramatic. Catholic Church, the most precious blood, the Borough. Catholic parish in the Archdiocese of Southwark in the care of the Ordinariate of Our Lady of Walsingham. And I profess to being completely ignorant of the history of that. preciousblood.org.uk. But it did strike me, this little statue. quite ornate, given that we're on a very quiet side street. I'm not going to go inside, but I'll just do a quick. Oh, I'll just do a quick shot. There we go. Maybe I can go inside very quickly. I don't want to offend anybody, but it looks like there's nobody in. Oh, that's nice. I like that ceiling. That is very impressive. And I'm not of this particular face, but I'm guessing that those sort of tableaus of events around the side there, there's one at each archway. I'm imagining that's the Stations of the Cross. Well, there we go. There's a confession box. Oh, push call. There you go. Chapel of the Precious, most precious blood. As you can tell, the trains from London Bridge pass overhead here. Sign followed by the side the dramatic brick viaducts and discover some of London's industrial and commercial heritage dating back to the 19th century and the time of the rapid spread of railways between cities and across the country. And you got the Globe, the Modern, the Shard, so the Cathedral. Yeah. So we emerge here. While we're here, I'll just mention, let's see, this building here, just sort of this side of where that white van is. Oh, what the hell, let's walk down. Oh, they changed the entrance, okay. Just saw a sign tell, which points out that I'm about to talk complete rubbish. Wouldn't be the first time. But basically this building is the site of what's called the Meunier Chocolate Factory. And it is a theatre. Now, last time I was here, this was the entrance in here. But obviously they've moved it. So it's obviously undergoing some refurbishment work. There we go, Meunier Chocolate Factory, still open, entrance on O'Meara Street. Okay, so while we're walking, I'll just give you a little overview of the Meunier. It has instigated some very famous works, including the Barnum Show. I think it started there. At the minute, it's doing a reproduction of Mel Brooks' Producers, I believe. It has done, some very big shows, despite the fact it's actually quite a small theatre, and it actually is sort of half underground, which means it can get a bit hot down there. I've been in a few times. I have to say it wouldn't be one of my regular events for no reason other than the ticket prices. Cheapest tickets are usually 40 to 45 quid, which in London terms isn't huge, but I go to the theatre a lot. I know, a straight guy going to the theatre, who knew? Pre-COVID, I could get tickets for different theatres, around about 15 quid, sometimes a tenner. These days it's more like 20, 25. So let's say across the year I was going to go to the Menu. I might see 10 shows. If I was to go other places where I can get cheaper tickets, I might be able to see 15 to 20. So I will forsake being in a small theatre, maybe with a better seat. We're going to see more shows, maybe with a rubbish seat. That's my logic. And if I had, obviously, more funds, then I would obviously do both.
The water was here, you were right there.
You can see here they're doing building work. We've got a lot of signs up telling you about the history of the area. The Liberty lives on. Look. I'm going to be doubling back down here in a minute, but I just wanted to show you this building. Alright. One of the things I mentioned in the first Borough walk was that the area has a very strong connection to the brewing trade. Lots of people coming over from Europe, lots of immigrants came over, set up shop, and brought the joys of strong beer to London. And this building is as a result of that. So I just thought I'd show you the gateway because it's very ornate. And then we're going to double back down, so I'll probably play some music then. Okay, so this is the Hop Exchange. Quite fancy, isn't it, with a big bird on top. If you look underneath the bird, you can see a relief showing sort of different stages of the brewing trade. It looks like sowing the seed and then people harvesting the seed or harvesting the plant. And the reason why this is called the Hop Exchange is because hops are one of the staple parts of the brewing process. A lot of times down in Kent, and people over here, even pre and post Second World War, people would go on hop picking holidays. As a Northern Irishman, the idea of going on holiday to work seemed weird to me, but I suppose that was how you maybe got a bit of extra money for your holiday. So people would go down, sunny day, go off on the farms and get paid to pick the hops for the farmer. And whenever the product was made, they would bring it back up here. Oh, very old-fashioned bus. Whenever the product was made, they would bring it back up here, and they would bring samples. Each farmer, each producer would bring samples to the Hop Exchange, where they would get graded, and then that would determine what price they got for their product. And when you're inside, it's actually got a glass roof, and that was to provide as much light as they could get to be able to sort of grade the goods. And I was in it once and I took some photos. If I can get some, if I can find them, you know what I'm like with my photos, if I can find them, I will put them in for you. So I think I mentioned dates from 1867. So very Victorian wrought iron work inside. It is very nice. And as you can see, there's more wrought iron work in the gateway here. Now, there's no traffic coming. I'm going to try and nip over because we're going to go back down this street we've just walked up. And then I'm going to put some music on until we get to the next spot. That's me for now. I think we've been going for about half an hour, so I think that will finish it for today. Hold on, let me check my glasses. Get my glasses on, I'll be able to tell you for definite. Yeah, so basically, because of the size of the video, it's 4K. Huge. I don't have ultra-fast fiber at home. Whenever they bring it out, I swear I'll buy it. But it basically means it takes forever to upload these, so I have to limit them to about half an hour, 35 minutes ago. And so that is us for part 2 of Borough. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the battery, and then I will do part 3. Okay, so hope you're enjoying these so far. If you are, or you know someone else that might like them, let them know, hit the subscribe button. You'll see the thing either side, you know the routine. And thanks for watching. Hopefully we'll see you in part 3. Okay, bye.